Saturday, June 18th, 1983, 1:19 a.m. Eddie Van Halen was sitting in a corner booth at the Vortex with two blonde girls, half smiling for the first time all night, letting the noise wash over him like he finally had permission to be normal. Then Ray Razor Martinez pushed through the crowd and said one urgent line. "Tommy's down, back alley." Eddie didn't ask questions, didn't finish his drink, didn't say goodbye. He stood up so fast the booth shifted and walked straight through the back door like the night just snapped in half. 5 minutes later, Eddie was standing in a rain-slick alley, fists up, one of his guys unconscious on wet pavement behind him, and two men who thought numbers meant power. What happened next didn't make Eddie a hero. It just proved something most people don't understand about violence. The dangerous ones aren't the loudest. They're the ones who know exactly how much force it takes to end something, and how much it takes to walk away clean. The Vortex wasn't where rock stars went to be seen. It was where they went to disappear for a few hours. By 1983, Eddie Van Halen was already one of the biggest names in rock. 1984 was about to drop. MTV had his face on rotation. Guitar players across the world were trying to copy his finger-tapping technique and failing. He could have gone anywhere. Could have sat VIP at any club in L.A. with velvet ropes and bottle service and photographers waiting to catch him leaving. But Eddie didn't move like that. He went to places like the Vortex, dark, loud, no pretense. The kind of club where musicians showed up after gigs to drink cheap beer and remember what it felt like before everything got complicated. Tonight was supposed to be simple. Tour break, one night off, just Eddie and a few road guys trying to shake off the noise of arenas and interviews and record label meetings. Ray Martinez had been with Eddie for 2 years. Guitar tech turned road manager turned the guy who made sure Eddie got from point A to point B without the night turning into a lawsuit. Ray was good at reading rooms, good at knowing when laughter was covering something meaner. And tonight, inside the Vortex, he'd felt it. Two guys at the bar watching Eddie a little too long. Not fans, not friendly, just watching. Ray had made a mental note, kept his distance loose. Let Eddie have his moment in the booth with the blonde girls, harmless flirting, music too loud to think, neon glow making everything feel like a movie. Eddie was leaning back, half listening to a story one of the girls was telling, when Tommy Tone Navarro, one of the crew, good kid, guitar tech who'd been with them since Phoenix, walked past their booth toward the back exit. Heading to the van to grab something. Routine. Normal. Except Tommy never made it to the van. 30 seconds later, Ray heard the commotion. Raised voices. The sharp crack of something hitting pavement. Ray moved fast. Pushed through the crowd. Found Tommy on the ground in the alley, blood running from his nose, two guys standing over him laughing. Ray didn't waste time trying to handle it himself. He spun back inside, found Eddie, and delivered the line that changed the entire night. "Tommy's down, back alley." Eddie's face shifted. The half-smile disappeared. The relaxed posture straightened. He stood up without a word and walked. The alley behind the Vortex was narrow. Brick walls on both sides. Red neon sign bleeding light across wet pavement from the rain earlier that evening. Steam rising from grates. The kind of space where sound echoes and witnesses stay in shadow. When Eddie pushed through the back door, he saw Tommy first, on the ground. White shirt stained, breathing but not moving, eyes closed. Then he saw the two men standing over him. Darren Pike wasn't famous. He was worse, local. A man who lived off moments he didn't earn. The kind of guy who hung around clubs looking for stories he could turn into credibility. Tonight, he wanted to borrow Eddie Van Halen's name like it was a jacket. Pike was lean, athletic build, tight jaw, cold eyes, a faint scar near his right eyebrow that suggested he'd been in situations before. Black leather jacket with red lining, boots that slapped wet pavement when he moved. He had the kind of presence that commanded attention in small rooms, the kind that made nervous people defer to him because it was easier than testing him. And next to him stood Kenny Rourke. Kenny didn't talk like Pike. He didn't need words. He needed contact. The kind of guy who turns a sentence into a punch just to feel real. Buzzed hair, flush face, thick shoulders, heavy hands, dark hoodie under a jacket with the sleeves pushed up like he was always ready. Kenny was Pike's proof guy. The one who started things so Pike could talk after and claim control. And right now, Kenny was cracking his knuckles, staring at Eddie like he'd just won something. Ray was already in the alley, hood up, positioned behind Eddie, not to fight, to grab Eddie's jacket if Eddie's fuse burned too fast. Because Ray knew Eddie, knew he moved quick, knew he could end things in seconds if he wanted to. But Ray also knew what happened when rock stars got caught on camera with bruised knuckles and police reports. Cal Hines, the club's doorman, was standing near the exit. Big guy, arms crossed, watching, waiting to see how bad this was going to get. Because Cal knew the rule. Fights in the alley stayed in the alley as long as nobody died and the cops didn't show up. Eddie stopped 3 steps into the alley. His eyes went to Tommy first. Checked his chest, rising and falling. Alive. Then his eyes went to Pike and Kenny. The air tightened. Pike smiled. Not friendly. The kind of smile that says, "I've been waiting for this." "Your boy hit the ground 'cause he deserved it," Kenny said. Voice flat. No apology, just fact. Eddie didn't respond. He knelt down next to Tommy. Checked his pulse. Looked at the blood. Looked at the way Tommy's hands were scraped from trying to catch himself when he fell. Tommy hadn't swung at anyone. Tommy wasn't built for this. He was a guitar tech. A good kid who showed up early and stayed late and never caused problems. And now he was unconscious on wet pavement because 2 men decided he was an easy target. Eddie stayed kneeling for 5 seconds. Neon buzz, rain steam. Somebody in the alley laughed wrong. Ray tightened his grip on Eddie's jacket, whispered low, "Ed, don't." Eddie didn't look at Ray. He looked at Pike. Then he stood up, slow, deliberate. His voice came out quiet, but it carried. "That's my guy." Pause. "You don't get to do that and keep smiling." Pike's smile didn't fade. If anything, it got wider. "This is my alley. You don't walk out like you own it." "I'm not walking out," Eddie said. "I'm walking through you." Kenny stepped forward, fist already rising. The kind of guy who mistakes movement for power. Eddie didn't flinch. Ray's hand tightened on Eddie's jacket. "Ed." But Eddie was already moving. Here's the thing most people don't understand about Eddie Van Halen. He wasn't a fighter, wasn't trained, wasn't some backstreet brawler who grew up throwing hands. But he was fast, and he was precise. And when he committed to something, he committed fully. Guitar solos, stage dives, and now this. Kenny swung first. Wide arc. Too much wind-up. The kind of punch that looks intimidating, but telegraphs itself 3 seconds early. Eddie slipped most of it, barely moved his head. But Kenny's knuckles caught him, glancing, just enough. Eddie's head snapped slightly to the side. He blinked once, jaw tight. Felt the sting start to spread under his eye. He didn't rage, didn't lose himself. He just reset. 1 breath, 1 step. Then Eddie answered. Short, hard, clean. Kenny's head snapped back. He stumbled, caught himself on the brick wall, blinked like he didn't understand what just happened. Pike's smile finally dropped, because he'd expected Eddie to fold, expected him to back down, expected numbers to mean something. But Eddie wasn't backing down. He stepped toward Pike, not aggressive, not wild, just present. You wanted this, Eddie said, voice still quiet. So let's finish it." Pike hesitated, and in that hesitation, the whole dynamic shifted, because Pike wasn't a fighter either. He was a talker, a manipulator, a man who built himself on other people's fear. And Eddie wasn't afraid. Kenny pushed off the wall, tried to come back in. Ray stepped between them, hood still up, voice calm but firm. "Back up, it's done." Kenny's eyes flicked to Pike, waiting for permission. Pike looked at Eddie, really looked at him, saw the bruise already forming under Eddie's eye from Kenny's hit. Saw the way Eddie's hands were still up. Saw the way Eddie wasn't performing, wasn't trying to look tough. He was just there, ready, waiting. And Pike made a choice. He stepped back. "Not worth it," Pike muttered, like he was doing Eddie a favor. Kenny followed, still flexing his hands, still wanting contact, but following anyway. They backed toward the far end of the alley, disappeared into shadow. The alley went quiet, just the hum of neon, the distant pulse of music from inside the club, the sound of Tommy breathing. Eddie turned away from where Pike and Kenny had been standing and knelt down next to Tommy again. The bruise under his eye was already starting to swell. He could feel it, but he didn't touch it, didn't acknowledge it. "Tommy, hey, you with me?" Tommy's eyes fluttered, opened halfway, confused. "What? What happened?" "You're good," Eddie said. "You're gonna be fine." Ray was already moving. "I'll get water." Cal, the doorman, stepped closer. "Need me to call someone?" Eddie looked up. "Yeah. Quiet, though. No cops, no headlines." Cal nodded. He'd seen this before. Knew how to handle it. Eddie reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded stack of bills, pressed it into Cal's hand. "For the mess. And for his ride home. Make sure he gets there safe." Cal took the money. "You got it." Eddie stood, looked back toward the far end of the alley where Pike and Kenny had disappeared. He could have chased them, could have turned this into something bigger, could have made it a story people told for years. He didn't. He walked over to where Pike had been standing, quiet, just close enough that his voice would carry if Pike was still listening. "Go home. Don't make this your life." No mocking, no victory lap, just a statement. Then Eddie turned and walked back toward Ray and Tommy. Ray was helping Tommy sit up, water bottle in hand. Eddie put a hand on Tommy's shoulder. "You good?" Tommy nodded, still dazed, but alive. "Yeah, thanks, Ed." Eddie didn't respond, just squeezed Tommy's shoulder once and stood up. Ray looked at Eddie. "We leaving?" "Yeah." They walked toward the far exit of the alley, away from the vortex, away from the noise, away from the moment before it could grow into something worse. Cal watched them go, shook his head, pocketed the money Eddie had given him. And inside the vortex, the two blonde girls Eddie had been sitting with were still in the booth, wondering where he went. They'd never know, because Eddie didn't come back inside, didn't finish his drink, didn't tell the story. He just left. Within 3 days, whispers started moving through West Hollywood. Not through magazines, not through radio, just the way stories move when something real happens and people who are there can't help but talk. You hear what happened outside the vortex? Eddie Van Halen got into it with some local guys. What happened? His guy went down. Eddie handled it, then left before it could turn into a circus. By Monday, session players across L.A. knew the story. By Wednesday, guitar techs were passing it around like folklore. The story wasn't about the fight. It was about what Eddie did after. He didn't gloat, didn't make it a legend, didn't turn Pike and Kenny into examples. He just made sure his guy was safe, paid for the cleanup, and walked away clean. Darren Pike stopped showing up at the Vortex. Word was he moved his operation to a different part of town. Still talked big. still tried to borrow credibility from moments he didn't earn. But in West Hollywood, once you're exposed, the story follows you. Kenny Rourke kept cracking knuckles and looking for contact. Still the same guy. Still turning sentences into punches just to feel real. But neither of them ever said Eddie Van Halen's name again. Years later, a young guitarist asked Eddie about that night, about the alley, about how he stayed calm when his guy went down. "Weren't you scared?" the kid asked. Eddie thought about it. Scared of what? Getting hurt, getting in trouble, messing up your hands. Eddie smiled, not cocky, just honest. "I was more scared of what would happen if I didn't do anything." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Tommy was my guy, my responsibility. If I walk away, what does that say? That I only show up when it's convenient? That I only protect people when it's safe?" The kid nodded slowly. "So you had to fight." "I had to end it," Eddie corrected. "There's a difference." "What's the difference?" Eddie leaned back, thought for a moment. "Fighting is about ego, about proving something. Ending it is about stopping harm and getting everyone home safe. One of those things makes you dangerous. The other makes you stupid." The kid didn't say anything, just absorbed it. Eddie added one more thing. Quiet, almost like he was reminding himself. "And once it's over, you let it die. You don't turn it into a trophy. You don't parade it around. You just close the door and move on." The story of what happened outside the Vortex didn't make Eddie Van Halen a hero. It just confirmed something people who really knew him already understood. Eddie didn't move for applause. He moved for the people standing next to him. And when violence became necessary, he didn't turn it into theater. He ended it as quickly as possible and walked away before pride could make it worse. That night, Eddie had two choices. He could have walked away, could have let Tommy take the loss, could have told himself it wasn't his problem, or he could have gone too far, could have made Pike and Kenny into examples, could have let rage turn the alley into something nobody walked away from clean. He chose neither. He chose proportion, restraint, just enough force to stop the threat, just enough presence to protect his guy, and just enough discipline to walk away before ego turned it into a spectacle. That's what made him dangerous. Not because he could fight, because he knew when to stop. That's what made him different. Not because he won, because he refused to let winning become the point.